today's craft, you will need a white piece of paper, a Sharpie marker, and a cup of tea with a paintbrush. Hello, bonjour, and tanse everyone. My name is Pearl and welcome back to another virtual Sunday school. So today we have a very interesting story that Jesus told us. Now this isn't a story about Jesus, but it's one that Jesus told his friends. So I think it ought to be interesting. And then as always, we have a spectacular craft to follow. So stay tuned for that. Let's jump right into this story. So one day, Jesus told a story. There was a farmer who had two sons, and the two sons helped on the family farm. They fed the sheep and the cows. They cleaned out the stables where the animals lived. They grew vegetables to eat. They worked very, very hard. But one day, the youngest son said, "I don't like it here. I don't want to feed sheep and cows. I don't want to clean stables. I don't want to grow vegetables." The son went to the father and said, "Please give me half of your money. I want to go away." The father felt very sad and did not want the son to go away, but the father gave the money to his son and said goodbye. The son began to walk. Over the hills he went, around the mountains he went, through the rivers he went. He saw so many new things. "This is great," the son said. And he walked some more. Over the hills he went, around the mountains he went, through the rivers he went. He met lots and lots of new people. "How wonderful," the son said. And then the son began to spend the money. And soon all the money was gone. The son had nowhere to sleep. He had no food to eat. He had to take a job feeding pigs. The son began to feel sad. He looked at the pigs. He looked at the pigs' food. He was so hungry. The son began to wonder, will my father let me come home again? The son decided to find out. So the son began to walk. Over the hills he went, around the mountains he went, through the rivers he went. It was a long, long way back home. Over the hills, around the mountains, through the rivers, and finally he saw his father's house. And there, standing in the yard, was his father. The son felt afraid, though. What would the father say? But then the son saw his father running so fast. The father was running to him. The son called out, "Father, I don't deserve to be your son." The father gave the son a big hug, and he said, "My son, my beloved child, I am so glad you are home. Now I have both my sons again." The father gave a big party for all the sons, and their friends came, and they all ate and drank and sang songs and danced. The father was so happy to see his son again, and the son was so grateful for his father. That was such a nice story. Jesus always tells the best stories, I think. What do you think the moral of that story was? Do you think the son learned that sometimes it's hard being out on your own, and sometimes family is a good place to turn if you have troubles? I hope so. Our craft today kind of has to do with the son's journey, and it's a little bit fun and a little bit silly. So let's go to the craft corner and find out just what it is. Come on, everyone. Welcome back to the craft table, everyone. I'm so excited to show you what we have today. So today our story kind of followed a boy as he went on very long journeys from his home to the city and back, and he went through some mountains. So today we are going to draw a map. Now, it wouldn't be a proper map if it didn't look old and crinkly and brown. So I've crinkled the paper up a little bit, but I have a technique to get it really, really map-like. Now, you've probably noticed that I've laid down some plastic on the table, this red stuff. And that's because we're using water in this craft. I have a cup of tea here. With the paintbrush in it, it probably looks like dirty paint water, but it's tea. And I've just been letting this tea sit for a little while. You want to make sure it's a dark colored tea, not like a green tea, but something brownish. And you're going to take your paintbrush dipped in tea, and we're just going to go all along the map with the tea. And we're just going to paint the whole thing, and it's okay if it'll get wet because we need to give it time to dry anyways. So let's kind of go over our whole map. All right, so I've painted my whole piece of paper with tea. And now it's just a really wet piece of paper, but when it dries, it will be a little bit of a brown color. So that's kind of what we're looking for. So I'm going to leave this somewhere to dry, and we'll come back when it's all dry and brown. I just wanted to show you guys something, and that's that as your paper is drying, you can take your tea bag from earlier, and especially around the edges, you can give it a little bit more color just by pressing the tea bag into the edges. And it's still wet, but I just wanted to show everyone that, just in case you wanted a little bit more color like that around the edges. We are back and our map is dry. So we stained it with tea, and I did some little dabs with the tea bag there. And you can also definitely do this with coffee if you'd like. I chose tea today, but you could do it with anything you want. So our paper is nice and brown, and it looks very old, like an old treasure map. So we are going to kind of draw in the details that the son took on his journey. So remember, he went over hills and around mountains and through rivers. That is exactly what we are going to draw. And you can add your own details if you'd like, but we are going to draw his route. So I have our different locations on here. I have his home, the hills that he went over, the mountains he went around, and the river he went through. So now we just have to draw his route. So we're starting at home, and we'll go over the mountains. Over the hills. Sorry, we're not at the mountains yet, but we can go around the mountains. And through the river until you get to the city. And then, of course, at the end of the story, he goes all the way back home. So just as one final little decoration kind of measure, I am going to mark home with a red X because that is our final destination. That's where we want to end up at the end. So that is our map, and you can add more little details. You can color in the mountains if you like. You can rip the edges of the map just like so to kind of make it seem a bit older, a bit more crumpled even. You can do whatever you would like because it's your map. I am going to set this aside and I'm going to hang it up a little bit later. Thank you so much for joining me today, reading that wonderful story about the father and son, and also doing our little map craft. I had so much fun with it, and I hope that you did too. So I will see you next week, and until then, have a great rest of your day, and remember, God loves you very much, and you should love yourself too. Bye-bye, everyone.